Previously, after the Alpha King caught the scent of his fated mate in the servant of his future queen, nothing could stop his obsession. He wanted her, needed her, but love between a king and a servant was forbidden. Driven by jealousy and fear, Lady Daphne paid the young woman to vanish, before the truth could ruin everything she'd built. But what was about to happen that night would make even the Alpha King lose control. Every word was poison on the page, every line a betrayal of what they truly were to each other. But Anastasia copied it carefully, her handwriting shaking but legible. When she finished, Lady Cordelia examined it critically, then nodded with satisfaction. Good. Now take the gold and go. The carriage is waiting. They escorted her through the servants' corridors, avoiding the main halls where court members might see them. Anastasia walked in a daze, the heavy purse of gold in her hands, the sapphire gown they'd dressed her in now feeling like a costume for a play that had ended before the final act. The carriage was indeed waiting, nondescript, with a driver whose face she couldn't see clearly. Lady Daphne personally opened the door, her smile triumphant. "Don't come back," Daphne said sweetly, "because next time, we won't be so merciful." Anastasia climbed into the carriage, and the door slammed shut behind her. The driver cracked the reins, and they lurched into motion. Through the small window, she watched the castle recede. Somewhere inside those stone walls, Cassius was preparing for an announcement that would never happen. Somewhere, May was desperately searching for him, trying to deliver a message that might make no sense. And somewhere, deep in the rose garden, hidden beneath the stone bench where they'd sat together that first morning, was the silver clasp Anastasia had pulled from her hair and dropped there when May had distracted her captors, the only physical proof she could leave that she hadn't gone willingly. If Cassius found it, if he understood, if he searched, too many ifs. Anastasia pressed her hand against the carriage window, feeling the castle's pull diminish with every mile. The mate bond stretched between them like a living thing, growing taut, beginning to ache. She'd saved May's life, saved Elder Aldwin, saved her adopted family, but she'd lost everything else. Her wolf howled inside her, a sound of such anguish it nearly broke her. And somewhere, miles away now, she felt an answering howl. Cassius's wolf, sensing something was wrong, calling for his mate, but she couldn't answer, could never answer again. The carriage rolled on through countryside, growing increasingly unfamiliar. The driver had instructions, she assumed. Deliver her far from the capital, far from any chance of return. Dump her in some distant village where a servant girl with gold could buy silence and obscurity. Hours passed. The sun climbed toward its zenith, then began its descent. The announcement time came and went. Anastasia imagined the scene, Cassius arriving at her chambers to find them empty, finding the letter, reading those terrible lies written in her hand. Would he believe it? Would he think she'd abandoned him? Or would he sense the truth beneath the falsehood? Her only hope lay in that hidden clasp, in May's message, in the possibility that Cassius knew her well enough to know she would never leave willingly. But hope felt fragile as spider silk, likely to break at the slightest touch. The carriage finally stopped as evening shadows lengthened. They'd reached a village, small, remote, nestled at the edge of a forest. The driver opened the door, and Anastasia stepped out on shaking legs. "This is as far as I go," he said gruffly, not meeting her eyes. "You're on your own from here." Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the village square with nothing but a purse of gilt gold and a sapphire gown that marked her as too fine for this place. Anastasia looked around at the small cottages, the curious faces peering from windows, the unfamiliar landscape. This was her life now. Exile, isolation, separation from the one person the universe had made specifically for her. Her wolf whimpered, a sound of such profound grief that tears finally spilled down Anastasia's cheeks. But she was alive. May was alive. The people she cared about were safe. It had to be enough. Even as the mate bond throbbed with distance and denial, even as every instinct screamed at her to turn around and run back toward Cassius, she forced herself to move forward, to find an inn, to hide, to survive, because someday, somehow, she'd find a way back to him, or he'd find a way to her. The bond couldn't be broken by distance or threats or desperate noble ladies. It was written in their souls, blessed by the moon, eternal. All she had to do was survive long enough for fate to correct this terrible mistake. Anastasia found a modest inn and paid for a room, ignoring the innkeeper's curious stares at her fine dress and obvious distress. She climbed the stairs to a small chamber that smelled of old wood and lavender, locked the door, and finally allowed herself to collapse. Outside, the moon began to rise, no longer full, but still powerful, still watching. And miles away, In a castle now missing its heart, a king howled his rage and grief into the gathering darkness, refusing to believe the letter, refusing to accept her absence, already beginning the hunt that would consume him, because Cassius Davonmore was an alpha who'd found his mate, and no force in the kingdom could keep them apart forever. Cassius knew something was wrong before he even reached Anastasia's chambers. His wolf had been restless all morning, pacing beneath his skin with increasing agitation. At first, he'd attributed it to anticipation. The formal announcement was scheduled for 2 hours past noon, and his entire being ached to finally claim Anastasia publicly, to declare to his court and kingdom that he'd found his mate. But as noon approached, restlessness became distress. A gnawing anxiety that made his chest tight, made his hands curl into fists, made every instinct scream that something was wrong. He'd been in meetings with his advisors, enduring their concerns about political ramifications and noble alliances. Lord Brennan droning on about House Blackthorn's military importance, Councillor Thorne warning about economic impacts if certain families withdrew their support. Cassius had listened with half his attention, the other half focused on that invisible cord connecting him to Anastasia, checking it obsessively like a man checking a pulse. It had felt strong that morning, steady, reassuring. But around noon, it changed. The bond didn't break, that was impossible, but it stretched, became taut with distance. And beneath the physical sensation came an emotional surge so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. Fear, anguish, desperation. Anastasia's emotions, flooding through the bond with desperate intensity. "Your Majesty?" Lord Brennan paused mid-sentence. "Are you well?" Cassius was already moving toward the door. "The meeting is over. Leave. But we haven't finished discussing." "Now." His voice came out more wolf than man, and the councillors scattered. Cassius ran through the corridors, his long strides eating up distance, his heart pounding with dread. Guards and servants pressed themselves against walls as he passed, sensing the predator barely contained beneath his skin. He reached Anastasia's chambers to find the guard missing from his post, and the door standing ajar. Empty. The room was empty. His wolf roared inside him, demanding answers, demanding blood. Cassius's vision tinged amber as he stepped inside, his senses sharpening to painful acuteness. He could smell her, that unique scent of forest and moonlight that was purely Anastasia, but it was fading, hours old, and beneath it, other scents. Perfume, multiple women, fear. His gaze landed on the table where a single piece of parchment lay, weighted down by a leather purse heavy with coin. Cassius crossed the room slowly, every instinct warning him he wouldn't like what he found. He picked up the letter with hands that shook, not from weakness, but from the barely controlled rage building inside him. He read it once, twice, each word like a knife between his ribs. "This is my choice, made freely. Let me go. Don't search for me." "No." The word erupted from somewhere primal, rejection so absolute it shook the walls. His wolf didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. Anastasia wouldn't leave, not after what they'd shared, not after the bond had been verified, not when she'd looked at him with such certainty and said yes to every promise they'd made. The letter was wrong, false, forced, but it was written in her hand. Cassius crushed the parchment in his fist, his breathing ragged. Through the bond, that cursed, blessed connection, he could still feel her, distant now, miles away already, but alive, conscious, moving farther with every passing second. A commotion in the corridor made him turn. May burst into the room, her face flushed from running, her eyes wide with panic. "Your Majesty!" She stumbled to a stop, gasping for breath. She said, the rose garden. She said to check the rose garden where you first talked, that there's something there you need to see." Hope and fury warred in Cassius's chest. "When did she tell you this?" "An hour ago, maybe less." They brought me to her chambers. Lady Daphne and the others were there, and she pulled me aside. She whispered it, like she didn't want them to hear. Then they made me leave. May's voice broke. "Your Majesty, I think they did something to her. I think they—" But Cassius was already moving, the crumpled letter still clutched in his fist. The rose garden was on the eastern side of the castle, through the hedge maze, tucked away where they'd met at dawn just yesterday. Yesterday. Only yesterday, though it felt like a lifetime ago. He ran through the gardens with single-minded focus, barely registering the servants who scattered at his approach. The bond pulled at him, urging him away from the castle, toward wherever Anastasia had been taken. But if she'd left him a message, if there was evidence, the garden looked exactly as it had the previous morning. Fountain trickling peacefully, flowers nodding in the breeze, Stone benches positioned for quiet contemplation. Nothing seemed disturbed. Cassius stood in the center, his chest heaving, his eyes scanning every surface. Where? What had she left? What was he supposed to find? Where you first talked. The bench. Where they'd sat together. Where he'd held her hand and promised to protect her. Where she'd looked at him with those impossible blue eyes and made him believe in hope again. Cassius dropped to his knees beside the bench, his hands searching the ground around its base. Grass, dirt, pebbles. Nothing unusual. He was about to give up when his fingers brushed something metal, half buried beneath the bench's foundation. A silver clasp, one of the pieces that had held her hair in place. So small, so seemingly insignificant. But Anastasia didn't lose things carelessly, and she certainly wouldn't have hidden something here by accident. She'd left it on purpose. A message. Evidence. I didn't leave willingly. The realization crashed over him with devastating clarity. The letter was coerced. The disappearance was forced. Someone had taken his mate, threatened her, manipulated her, driven her away through fear or leverage or outright violence, and he knew exactly who. Cassius rose slowly, the silver clasp held in his fist so tightly the edges cut into his palm. His wolf surged forward, no longer pacing, no longer restless. Now it was focused, hunting, absolutely certain of its prey. He returned to the castle with predatory grace, his face a mask of lethal calm that made everyone who saw him back away. He went straight to the throne room, where preparations for the announcement were still underway. Servants arranging flowers, musicians tuning instruments, everything ready for a celebration that would never happen. Clear the room, Cassius commanded. The servants fled. Guards, bring me Lady Daphne Fairmont, Lady Cordelia Fairmont, Lady Evelyn Blackthorne, and Lady Amara Valamont. Now, and if they resist, drag them. The guards saluted and dispersed. Cassius stood in the center of his throne room, alone, his wolf so close to the surface that his eyes flickered between human brown and predatory amber with each breath. It took 20 minutes for the guards to gather the women. They entered with various degrees of confusion and indignation. Lady Daphne's face still flushed with what looked like triumph. That expression died the moment she saw Cassius. Your Majesty, Lady Cordelia began, her voice smooth with practiced diplomacy. We heard about the unfortunate situation with the servant girl. Such a shame that she... Where is she? Cassius's voice was barely human, thick with wolf. The women flinched. Where did you send my mate? I don't know what you mean, Lady Daphne started. Cassius moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. He didn't touch her. That would be too merciful. But he loomed over her, letting her see the predator that wanted to tear her apart. Don't! The single word was a growl. Don't lie to me. I can smell you in her chambers. I can smell her fear. I know what you did. Lady Amara, to her credit, didn't flinch. The girl left of her own accord. She wrote a letter explaining. She left a letter you forced her to write. Cassius held up the silver clasp. But she also left this. A message. Evidence that she didn't leave willingly. His eyes swept over all four women. What did you threaten her with? Her life? The lives of people she cared about? Silence. Damning. Confirming silence. You took my mate. Cassius's voice dropped to something cold and absolute. You threatened her. Manipulated her. Drove her away from the castle through coercion and fear. Do you understand what you've done? Do you comprehend the magnitude of your crime? We did what was necessary. Lady Evelyn lifted her chin defiantly. For the good of the kingdom. You cannot marry a servant. It would destabilize everything. The good of the kingdom? Cassius laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think threatening the king's fated mate serves the kingdom? You think driving away the woman the moon herself chose for me is somehow noble? She's nobody. Lady Daphne spat, her composure cracking. A servant with delusions of grandeur. We offered her gold, a way out with dignity, and she took it. If she truly wanted to be with you, she would have refused. She took it to save lives. Cassius's hands curled into fists. Whose lives did you threaten? May? Elder Aldwyn? Her adopted family? The flicker of guilt on Lady Cordelia's face told him everything. All of them, he said softly, understanding flooding through him. You threatened everyone she cared about. You gave her a choice between accepting exile or watching innocent people die, and you call that dignity. We gave her what she deserved. Lady Daphne began. The roar that erupted from Cassius shook the windows in their frames. It was pure alpha dominance, pure wolf fury, and it drove all four women to their knees involuntarily, their bodies responding to a power they couldn't resist. When Cassius spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. You are hereby banished from court. All 4 of you, and your families with you. Your lands remain yours, but you are forbidden from setting foot in the capital for 20 years. If you violate this decree, if you so much as send a letter to anyone within these walls, you will be imprisoned for treason." "You can't," Lady Evelyn gasped. "I'm the king. I can do whatever I want. And what I want is you gone from my sight before I forget that murder, even justified murder, would complicate my political position." His eyes blazed amber. "Consider yourselves fortunate that I'm showing more mercy than you showed my mate." "Your Majesty, please," Lady Cordelia tried. "Guards, remove them. They have until sunset to leave the capital. After that, they're to be arrested on sight." The guards moved forward, and this time, there was no gentle escort. The women were hauled from the throne room, their protests echoing down the corridors until distance swallowed the sound. Cassius stood alone again, his rage cooling into something colder and more focused. Determination. The Queen Mother appeared in the doorway, having clearly heard everything. "Cassius, not now, Mother. You can't go after her. The kingdom needs you here. There are duties, responsibilities. The kingdom can wait." Cassius moved toward the door, purpose in every stride. "My mate is out there, alone, frightened, thinking I might believe she abandoned me. Nothing matters more than finding her. And when you do?" Celine's voice was sharp. "What then? You bring her back to a court that already resents her? You think banishing 4 noble families will make the others more accepting?" Cassius stopped, looking back at his mother. "When I find her, and I will find her, I'm bringing her home. And anyone who has a problem with that can join the banished families. I've been patient, Mother. I've been dutiful. I've sacrificed and compromised for years. But this," he gestured toward the empty throne room, toward the announcement that would never happen. "This is where patience ends. I found my fated mate. I'm keeping my fated mate, and the court can adapt or be replaced." For a long moment, mother and son stared at each other. Then, surprisingly, Celine's expression softened. "Your father would have done the same," she said quietly. "When we were young, before I was fully accepted at court, there were those who tried to separate us. He fought for me with the same ferocity you're showing now." She moved closer. "Find her, Cassius. Bring her home. I'll manage the court in your absence. You'll accept her? Truly?" "I'll try." Celine's voice was careful. "She showed courage yesterday, standing up to me despite her fear. And anyone who would sacrifice themselves to save others has the heart of a queen, even if she lacks the training." A small smile. "Besides, Elder Aldwin sent word this morning. His research into her lineage has revealed something significant. When you bring her back, we have much to discuss." Cassius wanted to ask more, but the bond was pulling at him with painful insistence. Every second he remained here was another second Anastasia was farther away, alone, suffering. "I'm taking a contingent of guards," he said, "and Elder Aldwin, if he's willing. If anyone can help me track her quickly, it's him. He's already preparing." Celine gestured toward the corridor. "He's been in the archives since dawn, but I sent word. He'll meet you at the stables." Within the hour, Cassius was mounted on his fastest horse, surrounded by 6 of his most trusted guards, and Elder Aldwin on a sturdy mare. They carried minimal supplies. This wasn't a leisurely journey, but a hunt, and speed mattered more than comfort. "The bond will guide you," Elder Aldwin said as they prepared to depart. "Focus on it. Feel where she is. Your wolf knows the way." Cassius closed his eyes, reaching through the mate bond with everything he had. It stretched before him like a glowing thread, leading away from the castle, through the countryside, toward the forests in the east. And beneath the physical connection, he felt her emotions, fear fading into resignation, grief so profound it made his chest ache, and underneath it all, a desperate hope that he would come for her. "I'm coming," he sent through the bond, not knowing if she could hear him but praying she felt it somehow. "Hold on, I'm coming for you." He spurred his horse forward, and the hunt began. They rode through the afternoon and into evening, following back roads and forest paths. Along the way, they questioned travelers, innkeepers, anyone who might have seen a young woman in a fine dress traveling alone or in a carriage. At a crossroads tavern, a stable boy confirmed it. A carriage passed through around mid-afternoon. Fancy one with a lady inside. She looked sad, like she'd been crying, headed east toward Thornwick. Thornwick, a remote village on the edge of the kingdom, days away from the capital, far enough that Anastasia would be difficult to find, isolated enough that she'd have to rely on the gold they'd forced on her to survive. The thought of his mate alone in some distant village, believing she'd been abandoned, made Cassius's wolf howl with fury. They rode harder, pushing the horses to their limits. Night fell, and the full moon, now waning but still powerful, rose to light their way. In the moonlight, Cassius could feel his wolf even closer to the surface, lending him strength, sharpening his senses, guiding him toward his mate with unerring accuracy. They stopped only briefly to rest the horses, taking turns sleeping in shifts. Cassius didn't sleep at all. His entire being focused on that connection, on closing the distance between them. By the second day, they were deep in the eastern forests. The bond was stronger now, clearer, singing with proximity. She was close, so close. They entered Thornwick as evening shadows lengthened. It was exactly as Cassius had imagined. A small village, maybe 50 families, built around a central square with an inn, a smithy, and a general store, the kind of place where strangers were noticed. At the inn, the innkeeper confirmed what Cassius already knew in his bones. A young lady arrived yesterday evening, paid for a room upstairs. She's been in there ever since, hasn't come down even for meals. Which room? Cassius's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. Third floor, end of the hall. But sir, I don't think she wants to be disturbed. She looked quite distressed. Cassius was already moving, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Elder Aldwin and the guards followed, but he barely registered their presence. The bond was singing now, vibrating with proximity, pulling him down the hall to a wooden door at the end. He stopped before it, his hand raised to knock, suddenly uncertain. What if she truly didn't want him here? What if the letter, despite everything, contained some truth? What if she'd realized that being with him meant danger and difficulty, and she'd chosen the easier path? His wolf snarled at the doubt, absolute in its certainty. Cassius knocked. Anastasia. It's me. Silence. Then a sound. A gasp. A sob. Footsteps running toward the door. The door flew open, and there she was, still in the sapphire gown, now rumpled and tear-stained. Her hair hanging loose around her shoulders, her face pale with exhaustion and grief, but her eyes, those impossible blue eyes, filled with so much hope and disbelief and desperate joy that Cassius felt something in his chest crack wide open. You came, she breathed, as if she couldn't quite believe it. You found me. Did you really think I wouldn't? Cassius reached for her, and she flew into his arms, her body shaking with sobs. Did you really think some forced letter would make me believe you'd leave me? I left the clasp. I didn't know if you'd find it. I thought maybe. Her words tumbled over each other, incoherent with emotion. I found it. Cassius held her tighter, burying his face in her hair, breathing in her scent, reassuring his wolf that she was real. She was here. She was safe. I knew the letter was wrong the moment I read it. You would never leave me. Never. Anastasia pulled back just enough to look at him, tears streaming down her face. They threatened May, and Elder Aldwin, and my family. They said if I didn't go, if I didn't write the letter, people would die. I couldn't let them. I know. Cassius cupped her face in his hands, wiping away tears with his thumbs. I know what they did, and they're paying for it. They're banished, Anastasia. All of them. They'll never threaten you again. You banished them? Wonder and fear mixed in her expression. But your alliances, the noble families, can accept my choice or leave. Cassius's voice was absolute. I told you before. I waited 28 years for you. I'm not losing you because of politics or threats or manipulative nobles. You're mine, and I'm yours. And nothing changes that. Nothing. Anastasia's hands came up to cover his, and through the bond, Cassius felt her emotions settle, the fear and grief transforming into relief so profound it nearly brought him to his knees. Take me home, she whispered. Please, take me home. Always. Cassius leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers in the intimate gesture that had become theirs. I'll always bring you home. Elder Aldwin cleared his throat from the doorway. Your Majesty, we should rest tonight and leave at first light. The horses need recovery, and Miss Vera needs time to prepare for the journey. Cassius wanted to argue, wanted to leave immediately, but wisdom won out. Fine, but we leave at dawn. That night, Cassius refused to let Anastasia out of his sight. He arranged for a larger room, stationed guards outside, and sat with her while she ate the first proper meal she'd had in 2 days. They talked, not about the nobles or the threats or the future, but about smaller things, about the journey, about his desperate ride through the countryside, about how she'd survived 2 days thinking he might never find her. I felt you through the bond, she admitted quietly. I couldn't tell exactly what you were feeling, but I knew you were searching. It was the only thing that kept me from complete despair. The bond grows stronger with time, Cassius said. Eventually, you'll be able to sense my emotions as clearly as your own. We'll be able to communicate across distance, find each other no matter where we are. That sounds Intense. It is. He smiled slightly. But I want it. All of it. Every connection. Every intimacy. Every aspect of being mated. With you. Anastasia leaned against him. Exhaustion finally catching up. I want that too. I was terrified I'd never have the chance. You have it. Cassius wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. You have me. You have your place beside me. You have everything the bond promises. And when we get back to the castle, we're going to make it official in front of the entire kingdom. No more delays. No more interference. Just us and our destiny. She fell asleep against his shoulder, finally safe enough to rest. Cassius remained awake, watching her breathe, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat through the bond. He'd found her. Against threats and manipulation, against distance and despair, against every obstacle they'd tried to place between them, he'd found her, and he was never letting her go again. Outside, the waning moon watched over them, and in the forest beyond, wolves howled their approval. The hunt was over. The king had reclaimed his mate. Now came the battle to keep her. The journey back to the castle took 3 days. Cassius refused to push Anastasia too hard after her ordeal, despite his wolf's impatience to return home and claim her properly before the entire court. They traveled at a measured pace, stopping at comfortable inns, giving her time to recover both physically and emotionally from the trauma of forced exile. During those 3 days, something shifted between them. The desperate urgency of their first meetings gave way to something deeper, more grounded. They talked for hours, about his childhood as a prince learning to rule, about her years in service hiding who she truly was without even knowing it. They laughed together, ate together, and at night, Cassius held her while she slept, his presence keeping the nightmares at bay. The bond between them strengthened with each passing hour. Anastasia was starting to feel his emotions more clearly now, could sense when he was troubled or content, could feel the protective fury that still simmered beneath his surface whenever he thought about what had been done to her. On the morning of the 3rd day, as they prepared for the final leg of their journey, Elder Aldwin requested a private word with both of them. They met in a small sitting room of the inn, early enough that most of the other guests were still sleeping. The elder looked like he hadn't slept much himself, his weathered face drawn with exhaustion, but also something else. Excitement, perhaps, or trepidation. I've spent the past 3 days verifying my research, he began without preamble, sending messages ahead to the castle archives, consulting with historians in the villages we've passed through, cross-referencing everything I could access. He pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages covered in careful notations. And I'm now certain of what I suspected from the moment I heard your surname. Anastasia's hand found Cassius's, gripping it tightly. What did you find? Elder Aldwin opened the journal to a page marked with a ribbon. The name Vera doesn't appear in common records because it was deliberately erased, stricken from official histories, removed from genealogies, forbidden to be spoken in court circles. He looked up, his eyes grave. But it wasn't always forbidden. 27 years ago, House Vera was one of the most powerful wolf bloodlines in the kingdom. They were known as the Moonshadow Wolves. The title sent a shiver through Anastasia, though she didn't know why. The Veras ruled the Eastern Territories, Elder Aldwin continued. They were fierce warriors, intensely loyal to the crown, with an unusually strong connection to the moon. Their wolves were said to be larger, faster, more powerful than most. And their eyes, he gestured to Anastasia, their eyes carried that distinctive shade of blue, so pale it appeared almost silver in certain lights. Cassius leaned forward. I remember hearing stories when I was young, about a house that fell during my father's reign. A war? Not a war. A massacre. The elder's voice was heavy. 27 years ago, House Vera was accused of treason. The charges were substantial. Conspiring against the crown, planning a coup, amassing weapons and allies in secret. King Aldrich, your father, had no choice but to act. He sent forces to the Vera stronghold. What happened? Anastasia whispered, though some part of her already knew. The attack came at night. The Vera family fought back, believing themselves innocent, which only seemed to confirm the accusations. The battle was fierce and bloody. By morning, the entire house had been wiped out. Lord Marcus Vera, his wife Lady Elena, their 3 sons, extended family, loyal guards, all dead. Elder Aldwin paused, or so everyone believed. But I survived, Anastasia said, the pieces clicking into place with terrible clarity. You were an infant, perhaps 6 months old. Your mother, Lady Elena, managed to get you out before the worst of the fighting. She gave you to her most trusted guard, a man named Garrett Ashford, with explicit instructions. Hide the child, bind her wolf so she can't be tracked, Make sure she survives even if it means she never knows her true heritage. Anastasia felt like the room was spinning. My family was slaughtered. My entire house. My parents. My brothers. All murdered based on false accusations. Elder Aldwin's voice was gentle but firm. That's what I discovered in my research. The evidence of treason was fabricated. House Thornwick, who controlled the territories bordering Vera lands, wanted those territories for themselves. They manufactured evidence, bribed witnesses, created a conspiracy where none existed. By the time King Aldrich realized the truth, it was too late. The Vera family was already dead. Silence filled the room, heavy as stone. Cassius's hand tightened around Anastasia's, his wolf growling inside him at the injustice. My father knew? His voice was dangerous. He found out 2 years after the massacre. The guilt nearly destroyed him. He spent the rest of his reign trying to make amends. He stripped House Thornwick of their titles and lands, executed those involved in the conspiracy, established laws to prevent such manipulation in the future. But he couldn't bring back the dead. Elder Aldwin looked at Anastasia with something like reverence, which is why discovering you alive is miraculous. You're the last of House Vera, the sole heir to one of the kingdom's oldest and most powerful bloodlines. Anastasia couldn't process it, couldn't reconcile the orphan servant she'd been with this new identity. Lady Anastasia Vera, heir to a murdered house, survivor of a massacre that had reshaped the kingdom. The guard who saved me, she said, grasping for something concrete. Garrett Ashford. Where is he? He died 10 years ago. Natural causes. He lived long enough to see you safe and settled with a good family. Elder Aldwin smiled sadly. But before he died, he left a letter with the village priest, sealed and marked to be opened only if someone came asking about a child with blue eyes and the surname Vera. I sent a messenger to retrieve it 3 days ago. It should be waiting for us at the castle. Why didn't he tell me himself? Anastasia's voice broke. Why let me live my whole life not knowing? To keep you safe, Cassius spoke for the first time, his voice rough with emotion. If anyone had known a Vera survived, they would have either killed you to prevent any claim to the territories, or used you as a political pawn. By hiding your identity, by binding your wolf, Garrett gave you the one thing your family couldn't have, a chance at a normal life, until I met you. Anastasia looked at him, understanding dawning, until the mate bond triggered and my wolf started awakening. That's why the binding broke, isn't it? The bond was stronger than the spell. Much stronger. Elder Aldwin nodded. Mate bonds are moon-blessed primal magic. No spell, no matter how powerful, can stand against them. When you recognized King Cassius, your true nature had no choice but to emerge. Cassius pulled Anastasia closer, his arms wrapping around her protectively. This changes everything. You're not just my mate. You're nobility in your own right. A lady of one of the oldest houses. No one can question your right to stand beside me now. House Vera no longer exists, Anastasia protested. The territories were redistributed. The title dissolved. Titles can be restored. Cassius's voice carried absolute authority. Lands can be returned. House Vera will rise again, with you as its head. And when you marry me, you'll bring that house into alliance with the crown, healing the wound my father inadvertently created. The magnitude of it was overwhelming. Yesterday, Anastasia had been a servant running from forced exile. Today, she was the heir to a powerful bloodline, fated mate to the king, and the key to correcting a historical injustice. I don't know how to be a lady, she said quietly. I don't know politics or court intrigue or how to run a house. You'll learn. Elder Aldwin's voice was kind. You have intelligence, courage, and most importantly, you have a mate who will stand beside you through every challenge. Plus, he smiled slightly, you're a moonshadow wolf. Your instincts will guide you more than you realize once your wolf fully awakens. When will that happen? Cassius asked. Soon. The binding is almost completely dissolved. Within days, perhaps a week, she'll experience her first transformation. The elder looked at Anastasia seriously. It will be intense. Painful. Your body wasn't raised to shift, so it will resist at first. But once you complete that first transformation, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. Anastasia tried to imagine it, becoming a wolf, running on 4 legs, experiencing the world through senses she'd never accessed. The idea should have terrified her. Instead, something inside her thrilled at the prospect. Her wolf, silent for so long, stirred with approval. They departed the inn shortly after, the final stretch of road ahead of them. As they rode, Anastasia's mind churned with revelations. She had a history now, a lineage, a family that had been stolen from her before she was old enough to remember them. What were they like? She asked Cassius as they traveled. My family, the Veras. Do you remember anything about them? I was young when it happened, only a year old myself, but my mother knew them. Cassius's expression was thoughtful. I can ask her to tell you stories. My father kept journals, too. Records of his dealings with House Vera before the false accusations. You could read those, learn about the people you came from. The thought brought tears to Anastasia's eyes. I always wondered who I was, where I came from, why I was alone, and now, she couldn't finish the sentence. Now you know, Cassius said gently, and you're not alone anymore. You have me. You'll have the whole kingdom once we make this official. They crested a hill, and the castle came into view. Those familiar stone towers, the flags snapping in the wind, the walls that had witnessed centuries of history. Anastasia had left it as a servant fleeing in disgrace. She was returning as a lady, a mate, the last of a legendary bloodline. Guards at the gates recognized Cassius and opened immediately, shouting announcements of the king's return. As they rode through the outer courtyards, Anastasia noticed faces turning, whispers spreading. News traveled fast in the castle. Everyone would know by nightfall that the king had found his mate and brought her home. Queen Mother Selene was waiting in the main courtyard, dressed formally, her expression carefully neutral. But when her eyes landed on Anastasia, something flickered. Recognition, perhaps, or reassessment. Mother, Cassius dismounted and helped Anastasia down. We have much to discuss. Indeed we do. Selene's gaze remained on Anastasia. Elder Aldwin sent word ahead. I've been preparing. She gestured toward the castle entrance. Come, we have a great deal to accomplish before the formal announcement tomorrow evening. Tomorrow? Anastasia's voice came out higher than intended. The court has been in turmoil since you left. Rumors are rampant. We need to control the narrative, present a united front, and establish your legitimacy before opposition can organize. Selene's tone was brisk, but not unkind. Which means we have one day to transform you from a servant in hiding to Lady Anastasia Vera, last heir of the Moonshadow Wolves and future queen of this realm. It should have been impossible. But as Anastasia followed Selene into the castle, with Cassius's hand warm and steady in hers, she found herself believing it might actually happen. They were led to a suite of chambers, not the small room she'd occupied before, but proper noble quarters in the royal wing, 3 times the size, with a sitting room, a bedroom with a massive bed, windows overlooking the rose garden where she and Cassius had first talked. These will be your rooms until the wedding, Selene announced, after which you'll move to the queen's chambers adjacent to the king's. She gestured, and a stream of servants entered carrying gowns, jewelry boxes, documents. We have much to prepare. Starting with your appearance, you need to look the part of a lady when the court sees you tomorrow. The next hours blurred together. Anastasia was measured for new gowns, fitted with jewelry that had belonged to previous queens, taught the basics of formal court behavior. Selene was an exacting teacher, correcting posture, explaining protocol, drilling her on the names and houses of major noble families. You'll make mistakes, Selene said as evening fell. That's inevitable, but carry yourself with confidence, and people will forgive minor errors. Appear weak or uncertain, and they'll tear you apart. How do I appear confident when I'm terrified? Anastasia asked honestly. For the first time, Selene's expression softened slightly. By remembering who you are, not a servant, not an orphan. You're a Vera. Moonshadow blood runs in your veins. Your family was fierce, proud, unbreakable. Channel that. Let your wolf rise close enough to the surface that others can sense her strength. She paused. And remember that you're the king's mate. That bond makes you nearly as powerful as he is. Anyone who challenges you challenges him. Around midnight, Selene finally declared them finished for the evening. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be exhausting. When she left, Anastasia collapsed into a chair, her mind overloaded with information, her body aching from hours of standing and being fitted and drilled on etiquette. A knock at the door made her tense, but Cassius's voice came through immediately. It's me. May I come in? She opened the door to find him changed from his travel clothes into simpler attire, his hair still damp from bathing. He looked as exhausted as she felt. I know my mother can be intense, he said, entering and closing the door behind him. How are you holding up? I'm not sure. Anastasia moved back to the chair, and Cassius knelt before her, taking her hands. A week ago, I was a servant. Now I'm supposed to be a lady, a queen, the heir to a murdered house. How is any of this real? Because the moon willed it. Cassius's voice was certain. You were meant to survive that massacre. You were meant to be hidden and protected until the right moment. You were meant to find me, and I was meant to find you. All of it. Every horrible thing that happened. Every year you spent in hiding. It all led here, to this moment, to us. Anastasia wanted to believe him, wanted to trust in fate and destiny and the moon's plan, but doubt gnawed at her. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I can't be what everyone needs me to be? Then we'll figure it out together. Cassius lifted her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. You don't have to be perfect, Anastasia. You just have to be you. The woman who survived impossible odds. The woman who sacrificed herself to save others. The woman who left me a message in a rose garden because she trusted I would find it. His eyes held hers. That woman is more than strong enough to be queen. Tears spilled down Anastasia's cheeks, but they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion finally finding release. Cassius pulled her into his arms, and she cried against his chest while he held her, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances in a language that was half words and half wolf, comfort that resonated through the bond between them. Eventually the tears subsided. Anastasia pulled back, wiping her eyes, managing a shaky laugh. I'm sorry. I'm not usually this emotional. You've been through hell in the past week. You're allowed to cry. Cassius smiled. Besides, I find it oddly comforting that the fierce Moonshadow wolf who's going to stand beside me and help rule a kingdom still has moments of vulnerability. It makes you real. I feel very real right now. Exhausted and overwhelmed and definitely real. Then sleep. Cassius stood, pulling her to her feet. Tomorrow is a new beginning. But tonight, rest, recover. Let yourself be human, or wolf, or whatever you are, without worrying about appearances or expectations. He walked her to the bedroom, and when she started to protest that he should leave, that propriety demanded they maintain separate chambers until marriage, he simply arched an eyebrow. Anastasia, you're my mate. Propriety went out the window the moment the bond formed. I'm not leaving you alone tonight, not after everything that's happened. I'll sleep in the chair if it makes you more comfortable, but I'm not leaving. She didn't want him in the chair. She wanted what she'd had for 3 nights on the road, his presence beside her, his warmth, the security of knowing he was close. Stay, she said softly, please. They lay together in the massive bed, properly dressed but curled into each other, the bond humming contentedly between them. Through the windows, the moon, still waning but eternally present, watched over them. Tomorrow, Cassius murmured against her hair, the court will see what I've known from the moment our eyes met, that you're extraordinary, that you're mine, that you're exactly where you're meant to be. And if they don't accept me, then they'll learn that a king and his mate are not to be trifled with. His arms tightened around her. Sleep, my love. Tomorrow, we change the kingdom. Anastasia closed her eyes, finally allowing exhaustion to claim her. Her last conscious thought was that tomorrow, she would stand before the entire court not as a servant or an orphan, but as Lady Anastasia Vera, and beside her would stand the king who'd crossed the kingdom to find her. Together, they would face whatever came next. The moon bore witness to their rest, and in the forest beyond the castle walls, wolves howled, a song of approval, of welcome, of recognition that one of their own had finally come home. The forgotten truth had been revealed. Now came the reckoning. Morning arrived too quickly, sunlight streaming through the windows with cruel cheerfulness. Anastasia woke to find Cassius already gone, though the warmth of where he'd lain remained in the sheets. A note on the pillow explained, "Council meeting," Mother insisted. "I'll see you before the announcement. You're going to be magnificent." See, before she could fully process being awake, May arrived with breakfast and a small army of attendants. "Lady Anastasia." May's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "When I heard you were back, that the king found you, I was so worried." She set down the tray and pulled Anastasia into a fierce hug. "I delivered your message, just like you asked. I ran through half the castle looking for him. You saved me," Anastasia said, returning the embrace. If Cassius hadn't known to look in the rose garden, if he'd believed that letter, he never would have believed it. May pulled back, smiling through tears. "I could have told you that. The way he looked at you at that ball. A man who looks at a woman like that doesn't give up because of a letter." The attendants began their work, transforming Anastasia for her formal presentation. The gown Celine had chosen was breathtaking, deep midnight blue that brought out her eyes, with silver embroidery along the bodice and sleeves that caught the light like moonbeams. The neckline was elegant without being revealing, the cut emphasizing her figure while maintaining regal dignity. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style, half up and half down, with silver pins shaped like crescent moons woven throughout. They added jewelry, a sapphire necklace that had belonged to Cassius's grandmother, matching earrings, rings that marked her as nobility. When they finally stepped back, allowing Anastasia to see herself in the full-length mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a queen. The color is perfect, one attendant murmured. It brings out the Vera eyes. Everyone will know what bloodline you carry. The morning passed in a blur of final preparations. Celine arrived mid-morning, examining Anastasia with a critical eye that missed nothing. Good. Very good. And she circled once, adjusting a pin here, a fold of fabric there. The court will expect perfection, and we're giving it to them. She met Anastasia's eyes in the mirror. How are you feeling? Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Celine's reflection showed the hint of a smile. But don't let them see it. You're a Vera. Your family faced down armies without flinching. You can face down a room of nobles. My family also died facing down an army. Because they were betrayed, not because they were weak. Celine moved to stand beside her. I knew your mother. Did you know that? Lady Elena Vera. We were friends before I married Aldrich. She was remarkable, fierce and intelligent, with a laugh that could light up a room. When I heard she died in that massacre, I was devastated. Her voice softened with genuine grief. And now here you are, her daughter, alive. It's like having a piece of her back. Anastasia turned from the mirror to face Celine directly. Tell me about her. Please. I don't remember anything. For the next hour, Celine shared memories. How Elena had been one of the few nobles who didn't care about protocol or politics, who spoke her mind and challenged anyone who tried to intimidate her. How she'd loved riding through the forests at night in wolf form, claiming the moonlight made her stronger. How she'd fought beside her husband in border skirmishes, refusing to be left behind like a delicate flower. You look like her, Celine said quietly. Same eyes, same bone structure. But you also remind me of your father. Lord Marcus had this quiet strength, this way of making people feel safe, just by being present. You have that too. The stories filled something hollow inside Anastasia, giving shape to the family she'd lost before she could know them. By the time Selena finished, tears streamed down Anastasia's face, but they were good tears, healing tears. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Celine's expression shifted back to business. We still have to survive the court. Speaking of which, she pulled out a leather-bound book. This is your family's history. Garrett Ashford's letter is tucked inside, along with genealogies, records of Vera territories, everything I could gather. Study it when you have time. Know where you come from. Anastasia accepted the book with trembling hands, holding it like the treasure it was. Around midday, Elder Aldwin arrived to check on her wolf's progression. Close now, he confirmed after a brief examination. Very close. You might experience the first shift within hours, or it might wait a few more days. But when it comes, you'll need guidance. He glanced at Celine. Has the king been informed? He knows, Celine confirmed. He's prepared to help her through it. Though I suspect his wolf will make the process easier, mate bonds facilitate first transformations. What will it be like? Anastasia asked, nervous. Painful at first, Elder Aldwin said honestly. Your bones will reshape. Your body will change in ways it's never experienced. But then, freedom, joy, a connection to your true nature that will make you wonder how you ever lived without it. He smiled kindly. And you'll be beautiful. Moonshadow wolves are distinctive, larger than average, with silver-tinted fur that seems to glow under moonlight. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. The afternoon dragged slowly toward evening. The formal announcement was scheduled for sunset. Symbolic timing, the transition between day and night, human and wolf, old life and new. An hour before the ceremony, Cassius finally came to her chambers. He looked magnificent in formal black, his hair pulled back, a silver crown on his head. But when his eyes landed on Anastasia, everything else faded. Anastasia. Her name was a prayer on his lips. He crossed the room slowly, as if approaching something precious and fragile. You're stunning. Celine had an army of people working on me all day. I barely recognized myself. I'm not talking about the dress or the jewelry. Cassius took her hands, his gaze intense. I'm talking about you. The way you're standing. Confident. Regal. The way you're holding yourself. You look like you were born to wear a crown. I'm still terrified. Good. That means you understand the weight of what we're about to do. He squeezed her hands gently. But you're not alone. I'll be beside you the entire time. If you need me, just look at me and I'll be there. What exactly happens during the announcement? We enter the throne room together. I'll present you formally to the court, explaining your lineage and verifying the mate bond. There will be speeches. Mother has prepared remarks, and I've written something as well. Then we'll receive the court's acknowledgement, which is basically them accepting or rejecting you as future queen. And if they reject me, Cassius's expression darkened. Then they reject me. The mate bond isn't optional, Anastasia. The moon chose you for me. Any noble who can't accept that can leave the court. His voice softened. But I don't think it will come to that. Most of them are pragmatic. Once they understand who you really are, the last Vera, the woman who can help heal an old wound, they'll see the political advantage in accepting you. So romantic, Anastasia said dryly. Being accepted because I'm politically convenient. Being accepted because you're mine. Cassius pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers in their familiar gesture. And because you're incredible. And because any fool who looks at you can see you're meant to be queen. A knock interrupted them. Celine's voice called through the door. It's time. Cassius stepped back, offering his arm formally. Ready? No, not even close. But Anastasia placed her hand on his arm anyway, lifting her chin. Ready. They walked through the castle corridors, guards falling into formation around them. Servants stopped to bow as they passed, and Anastasia caught glimpses of their expressions. Curiosity, approval, some resentment, but mostly surprise at how regal she appeared. The throne room doors stood closed, and she could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices beyond them. The entire court had been summoned, every noble family still in the capital, their wives and children, advisors, generals, clergy. Everyone who mattered would witness this moment. Breathe, Cassius murmured as they waited for the doors to open. Just breathe, and remember, you're a moon shadow wolf. You belong here. The doors swung open, and the throne room fell silent. It was more magnificent than Anastasia remembered from the ball. Every surface gleamed with candles and torches, creating a warm golden glow. Tapestries depicting the kingdom's history lined the walls. And at the far end, 2 thrones sat on a raised dais, one larger, one smaller, both carved from ancient oak and inlaid with silver. The court had assembled along both sides of the central aisle, creating a path directly to the thrones. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them as Cassius and Anastasia entered. Anastasia felt every gaze like a physical weight, assessing, judging, questioning. Her instinct was to lower her eyes, to make herself small and unnoticed as she'd learned to do as a servant. But then her wolf stirred, rising close to the surface, and with it came something new, pride. These people were not her masters. She was not here to serve them. She was Lady Anastasia Vera, last of the Moonshadow Wolves, and she would not cower. She lifted her chin higher, meeting the gazes directly. Let them look. Let them judge. She had nothing to be ashamed of. Beside her, she felt Cassius's approval through the bond, felt his wolf recognizing hers, responding with fierce pride. They walked down the aisle together, their steps perfectly synchronized. When they reached the dais, Cassius ascended first, then turned and offered his hand to help Anastasia up. The gesture was symbolic, the king elevating his chosen mate to stand beside him as an equal. Queen Mother Celine stood to the side, dressed in formal burgundy. Elder Aldwin occupied a position of honor near the thrones, and arranged throughout the room were the noble families. She recognized House Ashford's blue and gold banners, House Sterling's silver and green, dozens of others she'd studied that morning. Cassius didn't sit on his throne. Instead, he stood before it, keeping Anastasia's hand in his, and addressed the assembled court. Lords and ladies of the realm, his voice carried effortlessly across the vast space. You were summoned here to witness something unprecedented. 10 days ago, I hosted a ball in hopes of finding my fated mate. That night, after 28 years of searching, the moon finally answered my prayers. He pulled Anastasia forward slightly, presenting her to the court. I introduce to you Lady Anastasia Vera, daughter of Lord Marcus, and Lady Elena Vera of House Vera, the Moonshadow Wolves. The murmur that rippled through the crowd was immediate. Shock, disbelief, curiosity. The name Vera clearly meant something to many of them. Some of you are old enough to remember House Vera, Cassius continued, to remember their service to the crown, their strength in battle, their loyalty to the realm. 27 years ago, that house fell victim to false accusations and political manipulation. My father, King Aldrich, spent his remaining years grieving that terrible mistake and trying to make amends. He paused, letting the words settle. What my father never knew, what none of us knew until recently, is that one member of House Vera survived the massacre, an infant girl, spirited away by a loyal guard and hidden through powerful magic. That girl grew up not knowing her true heritage, her wolf bound to keep her safe from those who might harm her. Cassius turned to look at Anastasia, and the love in his eyes was unmistakable. That girl is the woman standing before you now, my fated mate, verified by Elder Aldwin himself. The bond between us is real, blessed by the moon, and absolutely undeniable. His voice grew stronger, carrying the weight of royal command. Lady Anastasia Vera is not just my mate. She is the rightful heir to House Vera, to lands and titles that were unjustly stripped from her family, and she will be my queen." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Elder Aldwin stepped forward, his ancient voice clear and authoritative. "I verify the truth of King Cassius's words. I have examined the mate bond and found it genuine. I have researched Lady Anastasia's lineage and confirmed her identity. She is who the king claims, the last of the Moonshadow Wolves, daughter of Elena and Marcus Vera, and the rightful heir to their legacy." Celine moved forward next, and when she spoke, her voice carried surprising warmth. "I knew Lady Elena Vera. She was my friend, a woman of courage and intelligence. I grieved her death and mourned the loss of House Vera." She looked at Anastasia. "Seeing her daughter alive, seeing the Moonshadow bloodline restored, brings me more joy than words can express. I welcome Lady Anastasia to this court, and I support my son's choice completely." The Queen Mother's endorsement carried enormous weight. Anastasia saw shifts in the crowd, nobles who'd been skeptical now reconsidering, families exchanging glances and whispered consultations. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the assembled nobles, a voice rang out. "How do we know she's really a Vera? Anyone could claim a dead family's name." Cassius's eyes flashed amber, his wolf responding to the challenge. But before he could speak, Anastasia felt something inside her surge forward, her own wolf, no longer content to hide, rising to defend her heritage. "You want proof?" Her voice came out stronger than expected, carrying across the throne room with unexpected authority. "I have the Vera eyes. I carry magic that could only have been performed by someone with access to the highest levels of power and knowledge, the kind of magic House Vera was known for. I have documentation verified by Elder Aldwin, including a letter from the guard who saved my life." She took a step forward, and felt her eyes begin to change, felt them lighten to that distinctive pale blue that had marked her family for generations. "But more than that, I have this." She released Cassius's hand and closed her eyes, reaching for the wolf inside her. The binding had dissolved completely now, she realized. There was nothing holding her back except her own uncertainty. "Show them," her wolf urged. "Show them what we are." Anastasia let the transformation begin. Not fully, she wasn't ready for that yet, but enough. Her eyes blazed that distinctive Vera blue-silver. Her canines lengthened slightly. And around her, the air seemed to shimmer with an energy that made every shifter in the room take notice. The scent that emanated from her was unmistakable, forest and moonlight, but with something else underneath, something wild and ancient and powerful. The signature scent of Moonshadow Wolves. Gasps echoed through the throne room. "That scent," someone whispered. "I remember that scent. From before the massacre. The Moonshadow Wolves." Another voice confirmed. "There's no mistaking it." Anastasia pulled the partial transformation back, her features returning to fully human, but the impact had been made. She'd proven her heritage in a way no documentation could match, by showing the court exactly what bloodline flowed through her veins. Cassius's hand found hers again, and through the bond, she felt his fierce pride and approval. "Does anyone else question Lady Anastasia's identity?" His voice was dangerously soft. "Or her right to stand beside me?" Silence. Then, one by one, the noble families began to kneel. It started with Lord Ashford, distant relation to Garrett Ashford, who'd saved her life. He went down on one knee, fist over his heart in the traditional gesture of fealty. House Ashford recognizes Lady Anastasia Vera and welcomes the return of the Moonshadow Wolves. House Sterling followed. Then House Crawford. Then families Anastasia didn't even recognize, each kneeling in turn, each offering their acknowledgement and acceptance. Not everyone knelt. Some nobles remained standing, their expressions tight with displeasure or political calculation, but the majority had bent the knee. And that was what mattered. When the last family had offered their acknowledgement, Cassius raised his hand for silence. "Lady Anastasia Vera has been accepted by this court as my fated mate and future queen. In 3 days' time, we will hold the formal mating ceremony, binding us before the moon and making the union official." His eyes swept the assembled nobles. "All are invited to witness and celebrate. Any who choose not to attend will be noted." It was a polite threat wrapped in an invitation. Attend and show support, or mark yourself as opposition to the crown. "This session is concluded." Cassius's voice carried finality. "You are dismissed." The nobles began to file out, the throne room slowly emptying, but many lingered, clearly hoping to approach and offer personal congratulations, or make early alliances with the newly discovered Lady Vera. Anastasia felt overwhelmed by the attention, by the constant stream of faces and names and carefully worded pleasantries, but Cassius remained at her side, his presence steady and reassuring, guiding her through the maze of political courtesy. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last noble departed, and they were left alone with just Selene and Elder Aldwin. Anastasia's legs gave out, and she sank onto the smaller throne, her head spinning. Did that really just happen? It did. Cassius knelt before her, his hands on her knees. You were magnificent. The way you showed them your wolf, that was brilliant. No one can question your heritage now. I didn't plan it. It just happened. She wanted to defend herself, defend us. Your wolf is awakening fully. Elder Aldwin's voice carried approval. The transformation is imminent. Perhaps tonight, when the moon rises. Selene approached, and to Anastasia's surprise, she smiled. Genuinely smiled with warmth in her eyes. You did well, child. Very well. Elena would have been proud. She placed a hand on Anastasia's shoulder. Welcome to the family, officially. The words broke something open in Anastasia's chest. She stood and, without thinking, embraced Selene. The Queen Mother stiffened briefly, then returned the embrace with surprising gentleness. Thank you, Anastasia whispered, for the stories, for accepting me, for everything. Thank me by being a good queen, Selene said, but her voice was kind. And by making my son happy. That's all I've ever wanted for him. When they finally separated, Cassius pulled Anastasia close, and she leaned into him gratefully. 3 more days, he murmured. 3 days until you're officially mine before the entire kingdom. Can you survive 3 more days? If you're beside me, I can survive anything. The moon rose outside the tall windows, nearly full again, watching over them as it always did. And in the forest beyond the castle, wolves began to howl, not in warning or challenge, but in celebration. The air had returned, the moonshadow wolves had risen again, and a kingdom had witnessed the beginning of a new era. The first night after the announcement passed without incident, but Anastasia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It was subtle, a shift in the castle's atmosphere, whispers that stopped when she entered a room, servants who wouldn't meet her eyes. You're imagining it, Cassius assured her the next morning as they broke their fast together in her chambers. The court is adjusting. Change makes people nervous. But even as he said it, Anastasia saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes tracked every shadow. He felt it too. The second day brought the first concrete sign of trouble. Anastasia was in the library with Elder Aldwin, studying Vera family histories, when May burst in without knocking, her face pale with fear. Lady Anastasia, you need to see this. She held out a piece of parchment, her hands shaking. Anastasia took it, and her blood ran cold. It was a crude drawing, her face, recognizable despite the artist's limited skill, with a noose around her neck. Beneath it, words scrawled in an angry hand. Death to false queens. The Vera bloodline should have died with the rest. Where did you find this? Elder Aldwin's voice was sharp. Posted in the servants' quarters. There are more throughout the castle. Someone put them up during the night. May's voice trembled. People are scared. They're saying someone wants to finish what was started 27 years ago. Elder Aldwin took the parchment, examining it closely. This is more than simple opposition. This is a threat, a credible one. He looked at Anastasia. The king needs to know immediately. They found Cassius in a council meeting, but one look at Anastasia's face had him dismissing his advisors without explanation. When they showed him the drawing, his eyes flashed pure amber, and a growl rumbled through his chest that made the windows rattle. How many of these were posted? His voice was barely human. At least a dozen that we've found, May said. Maybe more. They're all over the lower levels. Kitchens, servants' halls, storage rooms. Someone's trying to intimidate the household staff, Elder Aldwin observed. Make them afraid to support Lady Anastasia. Classic destabilization tactics. Cassius crumpled the parchment in his fist. Double the guards on Anastasia's chambers. I want patrols increased throughout the castle. And find whoever posted these. Question every servant, every guard, everyone who had access to those areas last night. There's something else, May said hesitantly. I overheard something this morning. Lord Brennan was meeting with someone in the west corridor. I couldn't see who, but I heard them talking about how the mating ceremony can't be allowed to happen, that they need to act before it's too late. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Lord Brennan was one of Cassius's senior advisors, a man who'd served the crown for decades, if he was involved in a conspiracy. Are you certain it was Lord Brennan? Cassius's voice was deadly calm. Yes, Your Majesty. I recognized his voice. He said, May swallowed hard. He said that Lady Anastasia's blood is cursed, that allowing a Vera to become queen would bring the same destruction that almost toppled the kingdom 27 years ago. Anastasia felt like she'd been struck. Cursed blood. The same accusations that had destroyed her family were being resurrected to destroy her. He's using the old lies, Elder Aldwin said, his face grim. The same fabricated evidence that led to the massacre. Someone is trying to repeat history. Not someone. A new voice came from the doorway. Queen Mother Selene entered, her expression carved from ice. I know exactly who's behind this. Lord Brennan and Lady Thornwick have been meeting secretly for 3 days. I had them watched after the announcement. Call it instinct, but something felt wrong about their reactions. Thornwick. Cassius's voice was venomous. The family that fabricated the evidence against House Vera in the first place. Yes, they lost everything when your father discovered the truth. Titles stripped, lands confiscated, family name disgraced. Lady Margaret Thornwick has spent the past 20 years trying to rebuild their reputation. Selene moved to the window, looking out over the castle grounds. And now, with the Vera heir returning, with you restoring their house and granting lands back, the Thornwicks see their chance for redemption slipping away forever. So they're trying to kill me? Anastasia's voice came out steadier than she felt. Before the mating ceremony makes it permanent? Not just kill you. Elder Aldwin's expression was troubled. If they simply assassinated you, Cassius would hunt them down immediately. No, they need to destroy your reputation first. Turn the court against you. Make it seem like your death is justified. Then, when you die, people will whisper that it was deserved, that the moon was wrong to choose a Vera. The strategy was insidious and terrifyingly effective. Anastasia had barely been accepted by the court. A few well-placed rumors, some carefully manufactured evidence, and that fragile acceptance could shatter. We need to act now, Cassius said, moving toward the door. Arrest Lord Brennan and Lady Thornwick before they can... No. Selene's voice stopped him. That's exactly what they want. If you arrest them without proof, you look like a tyrant silencing opposition. Half the court will rise up defending them, claiming you're abusing your power to protect your mate. Then what do you suggest? Cassius's frustration was palpable. We wait for them to strike? Hope they don't succeed in killing her? We expose them. Selena turned from the window, and her expression reminded Anastasia of why this woman had been queen for so long. We let them make their move, but we control the circumstances. We catch them in the act, in front of witnesses, so their guilt is undeniable. You want to use Anastasia as bait. Cassius's voice was flat with rejection. Absolutely not. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you what needs to happen. Selene's tone brooked no argument. The mating ceremony is tomorrow night. They'll make their move before then. Probably tonight. We prepare for it. We protect her, but we let them reveal themselves. Mother, she's right. Anastasia's voice surprised everyone, including herself. If we arrest them now, others will just take their place. The conspiracy will go underground, and I'll spend the rest of my life watching for knives in the dark. But if we expose them publicly, if we show the entire court what they're willing to do, she looked at Cassius, then no one will dare try it again. It's too dangerous. Everything about my existence is dangerous. Anastasia moved to him, taking his hands. My family was massacred. I was hidden for 27 years. I was driven from this castle by threats and manipulation. I've already survived more than most people face in a lifetime. Her voice strengthened. I won't hide anymore. I won't let fear control me. If they want to come for me, let them. But they'll find out that Moonshadow wolves don't go down easily. Through the bond, she felt Cassius's wolf responding to hers, recognizing her strength, her determination. He didn't like it. His every instinct screamed to lock her away and eliminate the threat himself, but he also understood the truth in her words. Fine. His voice was rough, but we do this my way. Heavy protection, controlled environment, and at the first sign of real danger, we abandon the plan and I tear them apart myself. Selene nodded approvingly. Tonight is the pre-ceremony gathering. Traditionally, the maid is supposed to spend the evening in meditation and preparation, alone except for attendance. It's the perfect time for them to strike. Then that's where we set the trap. Elder Aldwin was already thinking it through. Lady Anastasia retires to her chambers as expected. Guards are stationed outside, visible but not too many, so the conspirators think they have a chance. But hidden within the chambers, he trailed off meaningfully. I'll be there, Cassius said immediately. Hidden, but close enough to intervene. And I'll have trusted guards positioned in the adjoining rooms, Selene added. At the first sign of attack, they'll move in. The plan was risky, relying on too many variables, but it was also their best chance to end this before it escalated further. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Cassius personally selected the guards, men and women he'd fought beside in battle, whose loyalty was beyond question. They positioned them throughout the royal wing, disguised as servants or hidden in alcoves where they could respond within seconds. As evening fell, the castle buzzed with activity. Tomorrow was the mating ceremony, and preparations were everywhere. Flowers being arranged, musicians rehearsing, the throne room being decorated with silver and blue, the Vera colors. Anastasia tried to focus on the normalcy of it, tried to imagine herself standing beside Cassius tomorrow night, being officially bound as his mate, but anxiety gnawed at her, making her jumpy, her wolf pacing restlessly beneath her skin. She wants to come out, Anastasia told Elder Aldwin as he performed a final check before she retired to her chambers. My wolf. She's so close to the surface I can barely hold her back. The first transformation could happen tonight, he confirmed. The stress, the threat, your heightened emotions, all of it could trigger it. If that happens, don't fight it. Let your wolf take over. She'll protect you better than any guard. Around midnight, Anastasia officially retired to her chambers for the pre-ceremony meditation. May helped her change into a simple sleeping gown, then left as tradition dictated, leaving Anastasia alone for the night. Except she wasn't alone. Cassius emerged from the adjoining room the moment May departed, his eyes glowing faintly amber in the candlelight. I'm here, he said quietly. Nothing's getting to you. I know. Anastasia moved to him, needing his touch, needing the reassurance of the bond. But I'm still scared. Good. Fear keeps you alert. He pulled her close, his arms tight around her. But remember, you're not the helpless servant they think you are. You're a Vera, and tomorrow night you'll be my queen. Anyone who tries to prevent that is going to learn a very painful lesson. They positioned themselves in the sitting area, where they'd have a clear view of both the main door and the balcony windows. Cassius extinguished most of the candles, leaving just enough light to see by, and they settled in to wait. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Anastasia began to think maybe they'd been wrong. Maybe the conspirators wouldn't strike tonight after all. Then, around 2 a.m, she heard it. The soft scrape of metal on metal, the door lock being picked. Cassius heard it too. He moved silently into position behind a heavy curtain, where he could observe without being seen. Anastasia remained in the chair, forcing herself to appear relaxed, sleeping, vulnerable. The door eased open slowly, carefully. 3 figures slipped inside, dressed in dark clothing, their faces obscured by hoods. But Anastasia recognized one by his build and movement. Lord Brennan. They moved toward her with predatory silence. One carried a knife, another a cloth that likely contained poison or sleeping draught. The third held something that looked like a prepared statement, probably the confession they planned to leave, making her death look like suicide or justifiable execution. Quickly, Lord Brennan whispered. We need to be gone before the guard changes. They were nearly upon her when Anastasia's wolf surged forward with overwhelming force. The transformation happened in an instant. No time for the painful reshaping Elder Aldwin had described. Just pure instinct taking over. One moment Anastasia was in her chair. The next she was on 4 legs, her body covered in silver-tinted fur that seemed to glow in the candlelight, her size nearly twice that of a normal wolf. She was magnificent, terrifying, absolutely lethal. The conspirators froze in shock. That moment of hesitation cost them. Anastasia lunged, her jaws closing around the wrist of the man with the knife. He screamed as she wrenched the weapon away, her wolf knowing instinctively not to kill, but to disable. Cassius erupted from his hiding place, his own partial transformation making him a blur of speed and power. He took down Lord Brennan with brutal efficiency, slamming him to the ground and holding him there with one hand at his throat. The third conspirator, Lady Thornwick, her hood falling back to reveal her hate-twisted face, tried to run, but the hidden guards burst through the adjoining doors, cutting off her escape. Within seconds, all 3 conspirators were subdued, disarmed, and surrounded by a dozen guards with swords drawn. Celine appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with grim satisfaction. Well done. Though I see we have an unexpected development. Her gaze landed on Anastasia's wolf form with something like awe. The Moonshadow wolf has awakened. Anastasia's wolf wanted to tear into the people who'd threatened her, wanted to defend her territory and her mate with violence. But beneath the wolf's fury, Anastasia's human consciousness remained aware, in control. She padded toward Cassius, who was still holding Lord Brennan pinned. The advisor's eyes widened with terror as the massive silver wolf approached, her lips pulled back to show fangs that could tear through flesh like paper. Please, Brennan gasped. I was only trying to protect the kingdom. The Veras are cursed. Anastasia growled, a sound so deep and menacing it made everyone in the room flinch. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She shifted back. The transformation reversed as quickly as it had come, fur receding, bones reshaping, until she stood before them in human form again. breathing hard, but steady. "The only curse here is your greed and hatred," she said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "You're willing to murder an innocent woman to protect your family's reputation. You're willing to repeat the same lies that destroyed my family 27 years ago." She stepped closer to Brennan, and he cringed back. "But I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore. Because I know what I am. A Vera, a Moonshadow Wolf, and the future queen of this realm. And you have no power over me. Take them to the dungeons," Cassius ordered, finally releasing Brennan. "They'll stand trial in the morning. Public trial, with the entire court as witness." The guards hauled the conspirators away, their protests echoing down the corridor, until distance swallowed the sound. When they were gone, Anastasia's legs finally gave out. Cassius caught her, lowering her gently to the floor, cradling her against his chest. "You transformed," he said, wonder in his voice. "Your first shift, and you maintained control. Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is? I wasn't thinking. I just reacted. My wolf knew what to do. She's strong, beautiful, everything a Moonshadow Wolf should be." Cassius pressed his lips to her forehead. "I'm so proud of you." Celine approached, crouching beside them. "The conspiracy is broken. By morning, the entire kingdom will know what Thornwick and Brennan tried to do, and why. No one will question your right to the throne after this." She smiled, genuinely smiled. "You faced them down as a wolf and a woman. You showed strength and mercy. That's what makes a queen." Anastasia looked up at the older woman, tears pricking her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me, for helping set this trap, for everything. Thank me by being happy with my son, by giving him the partnership he deserves." Celine stood, smoothing her dress. "Now, get some rest. You have a mating ceremony tomorrow, and you'll need your strength." After she left, Cassius carried Anastasia to the bed, holding her as aftershocks from the transformation rippled through her body. It would take time for her to fully adjust to having access to her wolf, but the hardest part was over. "I killed no one," Anastasia whispered. "I could have. My wolf wanted to, but I stopped her." Because you're not like them." Cassius's voice was fierce with pride. "You're better, stronger, more merciful." He tightened his arms around her. "Tomorrow night, I'm going to stand before the entire kingdom and claim you as mine. And nothing, no conspiracy, no opposition, no remnant of old hatred, is going to stop me." Anastasia nestled against him, finally allowing exhaustion to claim her. Tomorrow would bring the ceremony, the public binding, the official start of their life together. But tonight, she'd proven something to herself, and everyone who doubted her. She was a survivor, a fighter, a queen. The Moonshadow Wolf had returned, and this time, she wasn't going anywhere. The day of the mating ceremony dawned clear and bright, as if the heavens themselves approved. Anastasia woke wrapped in Cassius's arms, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows painting everything gold. For a moment, she simply breathed, absorbing the fact that tonight, everything would change forever. "Good morning, future queen," Cassius murmured against her hair, already awake. "Good morning, my king." The words felt right on her tongue, natural, meant to be. They lay together in comfortable silence, the bond humming contentedly between them. Anastasia could feel him more clearly now, his satisfaction, his anticipation, his absolute certainty that tonight was the culmination of everything they'd fought for. "How do you feel?" he asked. After last night's transformation, Anastasia took inventory. Her body ached slightly, muscles adjusting to having shifted for the first time, but beneath the physical discomfort was something else, a sense of wholeness she'd never experienced before. Her wolf was no longer a separate, unknown entity. They were integrated, unified, complete. "I feel like I can finally breathe," she said, "like I've been holding my breath my entire life and didn't know it." Cassius smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "That's your wolf. Now that she's awake, you'll wonder how you ever lived without her." A knock at the door interrupted them. May's voice called through. "Lady Anastasia, the Queen Mother sent me. It's time to begin preparations." The next hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Anastasia was ushered away from Cassius. Tradition demanded the mates spend the day apart before the ceremony, and surrounded by an army of attendants led by Celine herself. "Today you become queen," Celine announced as they entered a chamber Anastasia had never seen before. It was clearly designed for this purpose. A preparation room where future queens were transformed before their mating ceremonies. Every detail must be perfect. The gown had been commissioned weeks ago, before anyone knew Anastasia existed, intended for whoever Cassius chose. But when they brought it out, Anastasia gasped. It was as if it had been made specifically for her. Deep midnight blue silk, the exact shade of her eyes, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that resembled moonlight on water. The bodice was fitted, the neckline elegant, and from the waist, the fabric flowed like liquid night. But it was the train that truly took her breath away. 15 feet of silk and silver embroidery depicting the phases of the moon, each one rendered in exquisite detail. Your house colors, Celine explained. Blue and silver, the colors of House Vera. I had it altered when we discovered who you truly were. She ran her hand over the fabric almost reverently. Your mother was married in similar colors. I remember the day. She was radiant. The weight of history settled over Anastasia like a cloak. She wasn't just marrying Cassius. She was continuing a legacy, honoring a family that had been stolen from her, reclaiming a heritage that had nearly been erased. They spent hours on her appearance. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style, half up with silver pins shaped like crescent moons, the rest cascading in soft waves down her back. They added jewelry, the sapphire necklace from before, but also new pieces. A circlet of silver set with moonstones to rest on her brow. Not quite a crown, but close. Earrings that caught the light with every movement. Rings that marked her as nobility. When they finally allowed her to see herself in the mirror, Anastasia barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked ethereal, powerful, regal, like someone born to wear a crown. Your mother would be so proud, Celine said quietly, standing behind her. And so would your father. They gave their lives protecting their house, protecting you. Tonight, you honor that sacrifice by rising again. Tears threatened, but Anastasia blinked them back. She couldn't cry now, not after hours of preparation. Instead, she turned and embraced Celine. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for accepting me, for helping me become this. Celine held her tightly. Thank you for making my son happy, for giving him what he searched for his entire life. She pulled back, her eyes suspiciously bright. Now, let's go make you a queen. The ceremony was to be held outdoors, in the castle's ceremonial gardens. As evening approached and the sun began its descent, Anastasia was led through the castle corridors toward the gathering point. Servants stopped to stare as she passed, their expressions awed. Even the guards looked impressed, offering respectful nods. Elder Aldwin waited for her at the garden entrance, dressed in formal robes of silver and gray. Lady Anastasia, he greeted with a warm smile. You look magnificent. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be? Then let me explain what will happen. The ceremony has 3 parts. First, the presentation. You'll enter and walk to the ceremonial platform where the king waits. Second, the vows. You'll exchange promises before witnesses and the moon herself. Third, the binding, a ritual that seals the mate bond permanently, making it visible to every shifter who sees you. After that, you're officially queen, and no force on earth can separate you. Anastasia nodded, her heart racing. Through the bond, she could feel Cassius nearby, his anticipation matching hers. One more thing, Elder Aldwin added gently. Your parents would be here if they could, but know that they're watching from whatever realm souls go when they leave this world, and they're proud beyond measure. The words nearly undid her composure, but she held steady. Tonight wasn't just about her and Cassius. It was about every Vera who died believing their bloodline would be forgotten. It was about proving that some things, love, destiny, justice, couldn't be destroyed no matter how hard people tried. Music began. Not the formal, stiff court music from the ball, but something older, primal. Drums that echoed like heartbeats, flutes that sounded like wind through forests, strings that captured the longing of wolves for the moon. That's your cue, Elder Aldwin said. Walk slowly. Let them see you. Let them understand what they're witnessing. Anastasia stepped through the garden entrance, and the world transformed. The garden had been turned into something from a dream. Thousands of candles lit pathways between flowers that had been arranged to form patterns of moons and stars. Silver ribbons hung from trees, moving in the evening breeze like captured moonlight, and at the center, on a raised platform draped in blue and silver silk, stood Cassius. He was magnificent, dressed entirely in black, his long hair loose around his shoulders, the silver crown on his head catching the candlelight. But it was his face that captured her attention, the way he looked at her as she entered, like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever spoken. The path to him stretched before her, lined on both sides by the assembled court. Every noble family that had bent the knee 2 days ago was present, dressed in their finest, bearing witness. The ones who'd remained standing were conspicuously absent, a clear message that opposition to this union meant opposition to the crown itself. Anastasia began walking, her steps measured and graceful despite the train flowing behind her. The crowd watched in silence, but she heard the whispers, expressions of awe, approval, even admiration. She kept her eyes forward, focused on Cassius, letting him anchor her through the bond. As she walked, the moon began to rise behind the platform. Perfect timing, as if choreographed by fate itself. It was full tonight, massive and luminous, painting everything in silver light. Anastasia felt her wolf stir in response, felt the pull of the moon in a way she never had before. She reached the platform, and Cassius descended the steps to meet her, offering his hand. When their skin touched, power sparked between them, visible energy that made several observers gasp. The mate bond, responding to the ceremony, growing stronger with each passing moment. Together, they ascended to the platform. Elder Aldwin stood at the center, and Celine occupied a position of honor to the side. The gathered court arranged themselves in a semicircle, everyone able to see clearly. "We gather under the full moon," Elder Aldwin began, his voice carrying across the garden, "to witness the binding of fated mates. King Cassius Davonmore and Lady Anastasia Vera have been chosen by forces older than our kingdom, blessed by powers beyond our understanding. Tonight we make that blessing official." He gestured for them to face each other, hands joined. "Cassius Davonmore, king of this realm, alpha of alphas, do you accept Anastasia Vera as your fated mate? Do you swear to protect her, honor her, stand beside her through every challenge that may come?" Cassius's voice rang out clear and strong. "I do. From this moment until my last breath, she is mine, and I am hers. I swear it before the moon, before these witnesses, before every power that governs our world. Anastasia Vera, last of the Moonshadow Wolves, heir to House Vera, do you accept Cassius Davonmore as your fated mate? Do you swear to stand beside him, support him, be his partner in ruling this kingdom?" Anastasia's voice didn't waver. "I do. From this moment until my last breath, he is mine and I am his. I swear it before the moon, before these witnesses, before my ancestors who watch from beyond. Then by the power vested in me as elder of this realm, I declare this bond sealed." Elder Aldwin raised his hands toward the moon. "May the moon bless this union. May the ancestors guide it. May the wolves who run in the wild forests sing their approval." As if on cue, howls erupted from the forest beyond the castle. Wild wolves responding to the ceremony, their voices rising in harmony. The sound made Anastasia's wolf surge forward, made her want to join the chorus. Cassius felt it too. His eyes blazed amber, his wolf recognizing the call. "Now comes the binding ritual," Elder Aldwin said. "This will make the mate bond visible to all shifters who see you. It marks you as permanently claimed, permanently bonded." He produced a silver bowl filled with water that reflected the moonlight like liquid mercury. This water was collected from the sacred springs, where the first shifters received their blessing. It carries ancient magic. He dipped his fingers in the water, then traced symbols on Cassius's forehead, then Anastasia's. The water was cold, but felt alive against her skin. "Join hands and look only at each other," Elder Aldwin instructed. "Open yourselves to the bond completely. Hold nothing back." Anastasia locked eyes with Cassius, and the world fell away. There was no crowd, no ceremony, no castle, just them and the connection that had always existed, now being forged into something unbreakable. The bond blazed between them, growing from a thread to a rope, to something massive and all-encompassing. Anastasia felt Cassius's emotions flooding through her, his love, his pride, his absolute certainty that she was his destiny, and she sent back everything she felt, her trust, her growing love, her commitment to this man and this life they would build together. Power built between them, visible now as silver light that surrounded them both. The light grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeats, until it was almost blinding. Then, with a flash that made everyone watching shield their eyes, the light exploded outward and settled, into marks on their skin. Anastasia looked down at her left arm to see a silver mark had appeared, winding from her wrist to her elbow like a tattoo, but alive somehow, shifting slightly as if made of moonlight rather than ink. It depicted a wolf, in mid-howl, surrounded by phases of the moon. Cassius had a matching mark on his right arm, the same design, the mirror image of hers. "The mate marks," Elder Aldwin announced to the crowd. "Visible proof of their bond. They are permanently bound now, in this life and whatever comes after." Cassius pulled Anastasia close, and when he kissed her, the crowd erupted in cheers. It wasn't the chaste kiss of a formal ceremony, but something deeper, claiming, promising everything that lay ahead. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Elder Aldwin's voice rang out one final time. "I present to you Queen Anastasia Vera Davonmore, Mate to the king, last of the Moonshadow wolves, and rightful queen of this realm. The crowd dropped to their knees as one, even the most resistant nobles unable to deny what they'd just witnessed. Selene approached, carrying a second crown, smaller than Cassius's, but no less magnificent. It was silver, set with sapphires and moonstones, designed specifically for this moment. "I crown you queen," Selene said, her voice thick with emotion as she placed it on Anastasia's head. "May you rule with wisdom, strength, and compassion. May you honor the Vera legacy while building something new, and may you bring my son the happiness he deserves." Anastasia felt the weight of the crown settle, felt the significance of this moment ripple through her entire being. She was queen now, not just in title, but in truth. Cassius took her hand, raising it high. "My queen!" he called out, and the crowd responded, "Long live the queen! Long live House Vera!" The formal ceremony concluded, but the celebration had just begun. The gardens transformed into a festival, tables laden with food, musicians playing, courtiers dancing and drinking and celebrating what many were already calling the union of the century. But Anastasia only had eyes for Cassius. He pulled her away from the crowd, leading her to a quieter corner of the garden where they could have a moment alone. "How does it feel?" he asked, his fingers tracing the mate mark on her arm. "Like I've finally found where I belong." Anastasia looked up at the moon, full and perfect above them. "A week ago, I was a servant running from forced exile. Now I'm a queen, a wife, a wolf. It doesn't feel real. It's real." Cassius pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her waist. "You're mine now. Officially, permanently, irrevocably mine. And I'm yours." Anastasia tilted her face up for his kiss, and this time there was no crowd to perform for, no ceremony to complete. Just them, the moon, and a love that had been written in the stars long before either of them was born. When they finally pulled apart, Anastasia said quietly, "My family would have loved you. I wish I could have known them, but I'll spend the rest of our lives making sure their legacy continues. House Vera will rise again, stronger than before. Our children will carry that name with pride. Our children." Anastasia smiled. "I like the sound of that." They stood together under the moon, watching their kingdom celebrate, watching their future unfold before them, like a path lit by silver light. It hadn't been easy getting here. There had been threats and conspiracies, forced separations, and dangerous revelations. There had been moments when Anastasia thought she'd lose everything, when the obstacles seemed too great to overcome. But they'd survived. They'd fought for each other, trusted in the bond, refused to let fear or politics or the ghosts of the past determine their future. And now, under the full moon that had guided them from the beginning, they stood together, king and queen, alpha and mate, two halves of a whole finally united. From the forest beyond the castle, wolves howled again, not in warning or challenge, but in celebration. The pack recognized their alpha's happiness, the completion of his search, the rightness of this union. Anastasia's wolf stirred, wanting to answer, to join the chorus. She looked at Cassius, seeing the same desire in his amber-tinted eyes. "Run with me," he said, not quite a question. "Always," she answered. They slipped away from the celebration, moving into the castle and then beyond, to the private royal gardens that bordered the forest. There, under the moon's watchful eye, they transformed together for the first time as mates. Cassius's wolf was massive and dark as midnight, power radiating from every line of his body. Anastasia's was nearly as large, her silver-tinted fur glowing in the moonlight, living up to the Moonshadow name. They stood together for a moment, wolf to wolf, letting their animals recognize and accept each other. Then Cassius threw back his head and howled, a sound of pure joy, of victory, of a hunt finally ended. Anastasia joined him, her voice harmonizing with his, creating a song that echoed across the kingdom, and from everywhere, from the castle, from the town, from the forest beyond, other wolves responded, adding their voices to the celebration. The kingdom had its queen, the Moonshadow wolves had returned, and a love story that had seemed impossible became the foundation for a new era. They ran through the forest that night, two wolves moving as one, racing beneath the moon that had brought them together. They would return to the castle eventually, to the responsibilities and challenges of ruling. But for now, they were simply themselves, fated mates finally united, two souls that had been searching across lifetimes and finally found each other. The moon watched over them, ancient and knowing, satisfied with the destiny it had woven. Some bonds could be tested, challenged, forced apart by circumstance and conspiracy. But true mate bonds, the ones written in the stars and blessed by the moon herself, were eternal, and nothing, not death or distance, or the passage of time itself, could ever break them. Under the full moon, Queen Anastasia and King Cassius ran free, their howls mingling with the wild chorus, their love a beacon lighting the way forward for a kingdom that had finally learned. Destiny cannot be denied, love cannot be destroyed, and some happy endings are worth fighting for. The Moonshadow Wolf had come home at last, and her reign had only just begun.